The perfect Tuesday. The last truly perfect night of my life was a Tuesday. I didn't know it at the time, of course. You never do. It was just a normal Tuesday. I remember the smell of garlic and basil hanging in the air from the pasta Tessa had made for dinner. I remember the sound of our son, Caleb, shrieking with laughter as I chased him around the living room coffee table, his little feet slapping against the hardwood floor. It was that perfect kind of ordinary chaos. After his bath, he smelled like lavender soap and damp hair, and he was warm and heavy in my arms as I read him a story about a bear who couldn't sleep. Tessa was already on the couch when I came out, scrolling through her phone with her feet tucked under her. The TV was on, some home renovation show we weren't really watching. The apartment was quiet, except for the low hum of the fridge. I sat down next to her, and she rested her head on my shoulder. This was it. This was everything. That simple, quiet peace after the whirlwind of a toddler's bedtime.
You're smiling,
She murmured, not looking up from her phone. Just happy, I said. She looked up at me then.
Yeah? What about?
And right then, it happened. As I opened my mouth to answer, a crystal clear memory that wasn't a memory at all played in my head. I saw myself saying, this. Just this. I saw her smile. I saw myself reach for the glass of water on the coffee table, and saw my hand knock it over, a dark circle spreading across the oak wood. The vision was so real, so complete, that I flinched.
Owen, you okay?
Tessa's voice pulled me back. I stared at her, my heart suddenly beating way too fast. I hadn't answered her yet. The water was still on the table, untouched.
What's wrong?
She asked, her brow furrowed with concern. Nothing, I managed to say, forcing a laugh. Zoned out for a second. I tried to piece together what just happened. It felt exactly like hitting play on a video a half-second before you were supposed to. I needed to break the script. I needed to prove it was just a weird brain fart. So instead of saying what I'd seen in the vision, I said, thinking about that bear, seemed pretty stressed out for a cartoon. Tessa gave me a weird look, but she smiled.
Okay then.
I felt a small sense of victory. See, it was nothing. I reached for the glass of water, extra careful this time. My fingers wrapped around it, cool and solid. But as I brought it toward me, a jolt, like a tiny electric shock, went up my arm. My hand spasmed, the glass tipped, and cold water spilled across the coffee table, soaking a magazine. We both looked at the puddle, then at each other. Clumsy, I said, my voice sounding hollow to my own ears.
Owen, you're white as a sheet.
Tessa said, getting up to grab a towel.
You sure you're okay? You look like you've seen a ghost.
I helped her clean up the water, telling her I was just tired, that work was stressful. But later that night, as I lay in bed next to her, listening to the soft rhythm of her breathing, I couldn't sleep. I could feel it, deep inside my head. A low, silent hum. A vibration that felt like it was shaking my teeth. The static had started, and I was completely, terrifyingly alone with it. I woke up the next morning to the smell of coffee. My first thought was Wednesday. I had a big project deadline, and I needed to get an early start. Tessa walked into the bedroom, holding 2 mugs, a smile on her face.
Good morning, sleepyhead,
She said.
You look so peaceful, I didn't want to wake you.
A cold dread washed over me. She had said that before. Not last week, not last month. Recently. Very recently. The deja vu was so thick it felt like I was choking on it. What day is it? I asked, my voice raspy.
It's Tuesday, silly.
She said, handing me a mug.
Big day for you at work, right?
I stared at her. Tuesday? It couldn't be Tuesday. Yesterday was Tuesday. I lived it. I remembered it. I remembered spilling the water. I remembered the static. No, I said, sitting up. No, yesterday was Tuesday. Today is Wednesday. Her smile faltered, replaced by that look of gentle concern I was already starting to hate.
Honey, you must have had a really weird dream. It's definitely Tuesday. Caleb's got that playgroup thing at 10.
I grabbed my phone from the nightstand. The screen lit up, bright and unforgiving. Under the time, it read Tuesday, 8:15 a.m. I felt dizzy. I swung my legs out of bed and walked into the living room. The TV was on, tuned to the morning news. The anchor was talking about a traffic jam on the interstate, a multi-car pileup. The same report from yesterday morning. I remember the detail about a truck spilling its cargo of oranges all over the highway. A moment later, the anchor said it. Oranges rolling across 3 lanes of traffic. I went through the day in a fog. Every conversation was an echo. Every event was a rerun. I knew Tessa would suggest pasta for dinner. I knew Caleb would want to watch the same cartoon about the talking dog. I knew he would trip on the corner of the rug at exactly 3:42 p.m. I watched the clock tick-tock towards the time, my heart pounding. I wanted to scream, to tell him to not run through the living room. But what could I say? How could I explain it? At 3:41, I stood up. "Hey, buddy," I said, my voice tight. "Let's go build a pillow fort in your room." Caleb's face lit up. "Yeah!" He ran towards his bedroom, instead of through the living room. He didn't trip. I felt a surge of relief so powerful it almost made my knees buckle. I could change things. I wasn't just a passenger. That night, after we put Caleb to bed, I told Tessa I was feeling sick. I couldn't face the couch, the TV show, the glass of water. The thought of reliving that moment again made my skin crawl. She said, her hand on my forehead.
You don't have a fever. Maybe you're just stressed. You've been working so hard.
Yeah, I lied. Just stressed. I woke up the next morning. The smell of coffee filled the air. Tessa walked in holding 2 mugs.
Morning, sleepyhead,
she said. My heart sank into my stomach. It was Tuesday again. The 3rd Tuesday was when the migraines started. It began with a static, that familiar awful hum. But this time it didn't fade. It grew, twisting into a sharp stabbing pain behind my right eye. The déjà vu was constant, a roaring waterfall of memory that made it hard to focus on the present. Or what was supposed to be the present. I spent most of the day in our darkened bedroom, a cold cloth over my eyes. Tessa was worried sick. She brought me water and crackers. She kept her voice low. She was the perfect, caring wife. And that was the problem. Her concern felt rote. Her lines were always the same. Her actions were predictable, because I had already seen them twice before.
I'm calling Dr. Miller,
she said in the afternoon, her voice a worried whisper from the doorway.
This isn't just a headache, Owen. Something's wrong.
I knew she would say that. I knew he wouldn't have any appointments. I knew she would hang up, frustrated, and say he could squeeze me in next week. I lived through the whole conversation from the other room, my head exploding with pain. That night, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to tell her. I had to have someone else in this nightmare with me. Tessa, I said, my voice weak. We were in the living room. I'd forced myself out of bed. We need to talk. I tried to explain. I told her about the days repeating. I told her I knew what she was going to say before she said it. I told her today was Tuesday. And so was yesterday. And so was the day before. She listened patiently, her face a mask of love and deep, deep worry. She held my hand.
Oh, honey,
she said, her voice soft and soothing.
You're not well. The stress from your job, it's all getting to you. Sometimes when we're exhausted, our brains can play tricks on us. It's okay. We'll get through it.
She wasn't listening. She was handling me. She was a program running a script labeled Comfort Distressed Husband. She was dismissing the single most terrifying and important discovery of my life as a symptom of overwork. I felt a chasm open between us. I was completely and utterly alone. The next Tuesday, the 4th or the 5th, I was starting to lose count. I gave up on trying to explain. I just tried to live. I tried to find the seams in the simulation. I focused on the little details, the way the light hit the dust motes dancing in the air, the specific pattern of the wood grain on our dining table. I was trying to find something real, something that didn't feel like a cheap copy of the day before. I spent the afternoon on the floor, playing trains with Caleb. The migraine was a dull throb today. Manageable. I let the simple joy of it wash over me. The click of the plastic wheels on the wooden track. Caleb's delighted laugh when the red engine would crash into the blue one. For a couple of hours, I almost forgot. I was just a dad playing with his son. I love you, Daddy, he said, out of the blue, leaning over to give me a hug. I love you too, buddy, I said, holding him tight. And in that moment, the static roared. A memory, sharp and brutal, hit me. Caleb, leaning just like that, but too far. The train track slipping under his hand, his forehead hitting the sharp corner of the coffee table. I reacted without thinking. I grabbed him, pulling him back from the table just as his hand slipped on the track. His head missed the corner by an inch. He looked at me confused. What'd you do that for? Careful, I said, my voice shaking. Don't want you to get a bonk on the head. He just shrugged and went back to his trains. But I was reeling. It was different from the spilled water. I hadn't just predicted it. I had prevented it. I had intervened. I felt a spark of hope. Maybe I wasn't just a prisoner. Maybe I could be a guardian. Maybe my curse was to know the future of the single repeating day, and my purpose was to protect my family from all its tiny, hidden dangers. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark of the living room long after Tessa had gone to bed. The hope I had felt earlier was curdling into something else. Fear. I'd saved Caleb from a bump on the head. But what if something worse was coming? What if the day kept repeating because it had to, until some terrible, final event was allowed to play out? I looked around the apartment, this place I had once thought of as a sanctuary. Now it felt like a stage, a set, designed for a play that was performed over and over for an audience of one. And I was the only actor who knew it was all fake. I needed proof, not just for me, but for... I don't know who. For the universe. I needed one solid, undeniable piece of evidence that would survive the reset. A message in a bottle, thrown into the ocean of tomorrow. I walked into Caleb's room. He was fast asleep, his chest rising and falling softly. On his windowsill, a collection of little plastic army men stood guard. I picked one up. A green soldier, his plastic rifle broken off at the tip. I held it in my palm. It felt real. It felt solid. I went to our bedroom, opened my sock drawer, and buried the little green man deep in the back, under a tangled mess of black and gray socks. I checked my phone. 11:58 p.m. I lay down in bed, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I didn't close my eyes. I just watched the numbers on the clock tick over to midnight, waiting for the world to reboot. I woke up to the smell of coffee. For a single blissful second, my first thought was Wednesday. Then the cold reality crashed back in. The memory of the little green army man buried deep in my sock drawer. I didn't move. I just lay there, listening. I heard Tessa walk into the bedroom. I heard the clink of the ceramic mugs.
Morning, sleepyhead.
She said, her voice bright and cheerful.
You look so peaceful, I didn't want to wake you.
The words were just noise. My entire focus was on the drawer across the room. I sat up and took the mug from her hand, my movements stiff. Just tired, I said. I waited. I waited through the morning routine, through the news report about the traffic jam and the spilled oranges, through Caleb's breakfast. I waited until Tessa was in the shower and Caleb was sitting on the living room floor, engrossed in his cartoons. My heart was a cold, heavy lump in my chest. This was it. I walked into our bedroom. The air felt thick, charged with a strange energy. I went to my dresser, my hand shaking so badly I could barely grip the handle. I pulled the sock drawer open. It was just socks. A tangled mess of black and grey, but nothing else. I dug my hands in, frantically searching, my breath catching in my throat. I pulled everything out, throwing socks onto the floor. The drawer was empty. My legs felt like they were going to give out. I leaned against the dresser, my head spinning. I stumbled out of the bedroom and into Caleb's room. He didn't look up from where he was playing on the floor. I walked to the window, my eyes tracing the line of the sill where the moonlight had been last night. And there it was, standing in its designated spot, perfectly in line with the others. The green army man, his little plastic rifle still broken at the tip. I sank to the floor, my back against the wall. The proof didn't make me feel certain. It made me feel insane. My mind scrambled for an explanation, anything to hold on to. Did Tessa find it? No way. She'd have had to have gone through my personal drawer in the middle of the night and known exactly where to put it back. It made no sense. Did I move it? Did I get up in the middle of the night, sleepwalking, and put it back myself? Am I losing time? Having blackouts? The thought was terrifying. The idea that my own body was betraying me, doing things without my knowledge, was almost worse than the alternative. Because the alternative was impossible. That the world had reset. That time had folded back on itself. That an object had teleported from my drawer to the windowsill by a force I couldn't comprehend. People don't think that way. The human brain isn't built to accept that kind of reality. So, I was left with two options. Either I was completely and utterly losing my mind, or the laws of physics had decided to take a personal vacation inside my apartment. I didn't know which was scarier. After that, I couldn't trust anything, especially myself. The Tuesdays continued. I lost count. Were there 5 more? 10? The days blurred into one long continuous loop of the same conversations, the same meals, the same cartoons. My confidence was gone. I second-guessed every action, every memory. Did I really just have that conversation with Tessa, or am I remembering it from a previous loop? Did Caleb really just say that, or is my broken brain playing tricks? I stopped trying to find proof. I had my proof, and it had proven nothing except that the problem was unsolvable. My family life dissolved. I was a ghost in my own home, my mind consumed by the mystery. I would sit at the dinner table, pushing food around my plate, while Tessa and Caleb's conversations faded into background noise.
Owen, you're a million miles away,
Tessa would say, her voice laced with a worry that felt more and more distant to me. I was. I was in a world of impossible soldiers and men who floated. How could I ever explain that to her? Every time I looked at her, at Caleb, a new, terrible thought began to creep in. If the world could do this, if objects could move, then what was real? Were they real? Or were they just part of the same impossible magic trick? That thought was a poison, and it was starting to spread. I became obsessed with the only other impossible thing in my life. The gliding man. He was the only piece of the puzzle that didn't fit. Was he connected? Was he causing this? Was he some kind of hypnotist playing a sick game? Or was he just another symptom of my breakdown, a recurring hallucination I had cooked up to explain the unexplainable? He was my only lead. I started watching him, not as a warden, but as a suspect. I would spend hours at the window, trying to see him, trying to understand. The static in my head always seemed to hum louder when he was near. That had to mean something. One Tuesday, I was watching him from the living room window. He was across the street, a motionless silhouette. Tessa came up behind me and put her arms around my waist.
What are you always looking at out there?
She asked softly. Just watching the world go by, I lied.
There's no one out there, Owen.
I blinked. I looked at her, then back out the window. The figure was gone. The street was empty. But I had been looking right at him. He was just there, I said, my voice barely a whisper. A man in a dark cloak. Tessa's arms tightened around me.
Honey, there's no one there. I've been watching too. Please, I'm so worried about you.
Did she not see him? Or was he never there at all? The doubt was heavy, pressing down on me. The glitches started getting worse after that. Small things at first. I was watching the figure from the window as it glided past a row of parked cars. As it passed, the reflection of the sky in the car windows didn't move. The clouds were frozen. Just for the few seconds the figure was in frame. Another time, I was watching a flock of pigeons in the park near where it stood. The pigeons were all moving in a perfect synchronized loop, a 3-second animation that played over and over. Was I seeing things? Or was the world itself starting to fray at the edges? My obsession with the figure seemed to make things worse, as if by watching it, I was somehow pulling on a loose thread and unraveling the whole tapestry. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. That felt like the 100th. I had to get out of the apartment. I felt like the walls were starting to breathe. And I knew if I stayed in there, I'd go crazy for real. I needed to see normal people doing normal things. I needed to see if the world still worked right when I wasn't looking out through a window. I'm going for a walk, I announced, pulling on my shoes.
Owen, it's late.
Tessa said, her voice tired. We'd had the same argument a dozen times.
Can't it wait till morning?
No, I said. It can't. I pushed past her before she could protest further. I didn't look at Caleb, who was watching from the living room doorway with wide, scared eyes. I just had to get out. I took the stairs, needing the physical exertion. I burst out into the street. It was a bright, sunny afternoon. The world was alive. Cars were moving. People were walking and talking on their phones. It was all so perfectly, beautifully normal. A wave of hope washed over me. Maybe it was just the apartment. Maybe the sickness was in the walls, not in my head. I stood in a busy street corner, waiting for the light to change, just letting the normalcy wash over me. And then the static started in my head. That low, familiar buzz. First, the sound of the city got weird. It didn't get quiet, exactly. It just thinned out. Like turning down the bass on a stereo until all you have is the whiny, screeching treble. That's when I noticed the mailman across the street had stopped walking. He was frozen, 1 foot on the curb, hand halfway to a mailbox. Then a woman pushing a stroller a few feet away from me also stopped. Just stood there, motionless. My heart started hammering. What the hell? I thought. What is this? Then, in perfect, silent unison, they turned. Not just them. Everyone. The mailman, the woman with the stroller, a businessman reading his phone, a group of teenagers who had been laughing a second ago. Every single person on the street stopped what they were doing and slowly, with a smooth, mechanical precision, turned their heads to face me. Maybe 30 people. All staring. And their faces were blank. Completely empty. You know those old creepy dolls with the glass eyes? It was like that. There was no anger, no curiosity. There was nothing. Just these hollow, soulless eyes, all locked on me. They weren't people anymore. They were just things. And I was the most interesting bug in the jar. The silence was absolute. A whole city block, and the only sound I could hear was the blood roaring in my own ears. I stumbled back, tripping over a crack in the sidewalk. The spell, or whatever it was, broke. As soon as I moved, they all snapped back to normal. Just like that. The mailman put the letter in the box. The woman started pushing the stroller again. The sound of the city rushed back in at full volume. No one looked at me. No one seemed to realize that for 10 solid seconds they had all been puppets in some horrifying, silent play. I didn't run. Where could I go? I turned around and walked back to my apartment building, my legs shaking. The sickness wasn't in the apartment. The sickness was everywhere. It wasn't a hallucination. It wasn't a breakdown. The world was broken, and I was the only one who could see it. I stumbled back into the apartment and slammed the door, throwing the deadbolt with a loud final click. My back slid down the door until I was sitting on the floor, my head in my hands. Tessa rushed over, her face a mask of fear.
Owen, what happened? You look like you've seen a ghost.
I just laughed. A dry, humorless sound that scraped its way out of my throat. Not a ghost, I whispered. Something worse. I didn't try to explain. What was the point? The prison wasn't just the apartment. It was the whole world. The people outside weren't real. They were puppets. And the gliding man, the thing with the skull face, was the one pulling the strings. After that day, I didn't go out again. The loops continued, but I was done playing. I was a prisoner on death row, and my only remaining power was to choose the terms of my own destruction. I couldn't live in the lie, and I couldn't escape it. But I could break it. I could smash the dollhouse. Tuesday. I waited until late afternoon. Tessa was in the kitchen, humming as she started dinner. Caleb was in the living room, watching his cartoons. The scene was perfectly, peacefully domestic. It was the energy the creature fed on, and I was about to poison the meal. I walked into the living room, picked up the heavy oak coffee table, and threw it against the wall with a splintering crash. Caleb shrieked in terror. Tessa ran in from the kitchen, her face white with shock.
Owen, what are you doing?
I didn't answer. I grabbed a floor lamp and smashed it into the television. The screen exploded in a shower of sparks and glass. The static in my head roared, becoming a physical pressure. The lights in the apartment began to flicker violently.
Owen, stop! You're scaring him! You're scaring me!
Tessa screamed, grabbing Caleb and pulling him back towards the kitchen. I picked up a dining chair and hurled it through the living room window. The glass shattered and the sound of the outside world, the traffic, the sirens went silent. The hole in the window didn't show the street below. It showed a swirling, black void, like television static. The illusion was breaking. The walls of the apartment began to dissolve, like a watercolor painting left out in the rain. The floor beneath my feet flickered, the familiar hardwood pattern wavering to show glimpses of dust-caked, neglected floorboards underneath. The loving scent of Tessa's cooking was replaced by the thick, choking smell of stale air and decay. Tessa and Caleb were wavering too, their forms becoming transparent. Their panicked screams stretched and warped, becoming a sound that wasn't human anymore, like a tape player slowing down to a stop. The world cracked like glass, and then exploded into a billion points of light, leaving me in a screaming, silent void. I was falling, and then I landed. The landing wasn't hard. It was a dusty, wheezing gasp. I opened my eyes. I was in my own bed. The sheets, once clean and comforting in the simulation, were now grey with filth and damp with my own sweat. The air was thick and smelled of stale air and sickness. A sliver of grey light cut through a grimy window, illuminating my own bedroom, now a squalid prison I didn't recognize. My body felt alien. I was a skeleton held together by tight, papery skin. My throat was sandpaper. How had I survived this long? The question was a fleeting, impossible thought. Then a sound from the corner of the room. A soft, wet, clicking noise. My head turned slowly, every muscle screaming in protest. Unfolding itself from the deepest shadows was the figure. It wasn't gliding anymore. It was real and physical. It moved with a jerky, stop-motion horror, like an insect trying to remember how to be a man. It was tall and unnaturally thin, its gaunt, yellowed face a mask of starvation. The 2 points of light in its hollow eye sockets fixed on me. They burned brighter now, filled with a furious, hateful hunger. It took a slow, twitching step toward me, its joints popping. I was too weak to move, to scream. I could only lie there, watching my death approach. This was it. I had escaped the dream, only to die in the nightmare. It loomed over my bed, its shadow falling across my face. It raised a long, three-jointed arm, but then it stopped. It tilted its head with a sound like cracking wood. It seemed to analyze me, lying there, a broken, useless thing. The fight was gone. The rich, emotional energy it had been feeding on was gone, replaced by the flat, dull signal of near death. The meal was over. The toy was broken. With a final look of what I can only interpret as profound, ancient indifference, the creature turned away. It didn't need to be scared off. It was simply finished with me. It flowed to the wall, its body seeming to lose its solidity, becoming flat and distorted like a shadow in a warped mirror. It poured itself into a crack near the floorboards, a space no bigger than my thumb, and was gone. I was alone. I had won, and I was going to die here. The thirst was the first agony. The hunger was a dull, constant fire in my gut. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the silence. In the quiet of that filthy room, my mind replayed the memories. The perfect Tuesday. I could see Caleb's face, flushed with laughter. I could hear Tessa's voice. I could feel the weight of my son asleep on my chest. How do you mourn people who never existed? It's an impossible, crazy-making grief. My heart physically ached with loss for a woman who was never born, and a little boy who was nothing more than a psychic puppet. I cried, but my body was so dehydrated that no tears would come out. I was just a dry husk, grieving for ghosts. I tried to call for help, but the only sound that came out was a dry, rasping click. I tried to move, to crawl, but my muscles wouldn't obey. Life was happening just a few feet away, on the other side of the walls, but it might as well have been on another planet. The sun set on the first real day I'd experienced in months. I lay in the darkness, listening to the sounds of the city, waiting to die. Then the sun rose again. I was still there, weaker than before, my hope dwindling to nothing. I had survived the monster, just to starve to death in its lair. It was on the afternoon of that second day that a new sound cut through my delirium. A hard, official knock on my apartment door. I thought it was another hallucination, a memory, Police! A man's voice yelled. Request for a wellness check on Owen. The voice was real and was loud. It was from the world I couldn't reach. I tried to answer, but couldn't make a sound. I heard another voice, the building manager, saying something about not having heard from me in weeks, that my sister called. There was the sound of a key in the lock. The door swung open, flooding the filthy room with the bright, clean light of the hallway. A uniformed officer stepped in, his face shifting from professional readiness to shock as he saw the state of the room and the skeletal man lying in the bed. He didn't see the monster that had just slithered into the walls. He just saw a man who had suffered a catastrophic breakdown, wasting away in his own apartment. My sister's worry is what saved my life. That simple, mundane act of love from the real world was the only thing that could have stopped it. I woke up in a hospital. The world was a blur of doctors and nurses, of clean sheets and the steady, rhythmic beep of a machine. A cardiologist came in one morning. He had a clipboard and an air of detached professionalism. "Good morning, Owen," he said, his eyes scanning a paper on the clipboard. "We've analyzed your EKG and echocardiogram results." He looked at me over the top of the chart. "You have a severe case of non-ischemic dilated cardiomyopathy. Your heart's left ventricle is significantly enlarged, and the muscle wall has thinned, which is causing systolic dysfunction." He paused, letting the technical terms hang in the air before translating. "Basically, your heart is weak, and it's struggling to pump effectively. We're attributing the primary cause to the state of prolonged malnutrition you were in." He made a note in his chart, and for a second, I thought that was it. But then he continued, a slight frown appearing on his face. "What is atypical, however, is the accompanying electrical disruption. The arrhythmia is complex. We're seeing patterns that we can't fully account for, even with the severity of your condition." He tapped his pen on the clipboard. "For now, our focus is on stabilization. We'll be starting you on a regimen of beta blockers and diuretics to manage the symptoms." I just nodded. He saw the creature's footprint. That atypical electrical chaos was the scar tissue left behind by the parasite, a phantom fingerprint that no medical textbook could ever explain. The worst part was the psychiatrist, a kind woman who wanted me to accept that Tessa and Caleb were manifestations of a detailed delusion, a coping mechanism my mind had created. She wanted me to kill them all over again. She wanted me to let go of the only proof I have that any of it was real to me. I met with her this morning. I told her I was starting to understand that Tessa and Caleb weren't real. I told her I knew the memories were just part of the sickness. I saw the relief on her face. She told me I was making a breakthrough, that acceptance was the first step to recovery. She thinks I'm getting better, but I'm just learning how to lie. I'm building a new wall, not of routine, but of silence. I will take the medicine. I will do the therapy. I will learn to smile and nod and pretend to be a man recovering from a breakdown. I will tell them the monster is gone. But I will keep Tessa and Caleb safe inside me. Their memory is the only thing I have left. And that was The Perfect Tuesday by DougAndLexi. So, I'm getting immediate Groundhog Day vibes, except obviously in a more horrifying scenario. But yet again, it's fairly pleasant. Things can be really good. The protagonist feels like they can manipulate things in certain ways. They can make changes. They can make the day go pretty much any way that they want it to, which is it's very in line with that. The main difference is that Groundhog Day is quite a pleasant comedy movie. It does have some dark moments for sure, but it doesn't, it's not truly a horrific experience. It's more like it's trying to change a man's perspective in his own life. Whereas in The Perfect Tuesday, obviously we learn that it's a creature that's been fucking with him this entire time. But otherwise, like a lot of the looping mechanisms are very, very much the same, which is great. Great movie if you haven't seen it, from the 90s, Groundhog Day with Bill Murray. Really good. Let's see. Otherwise, I think what's really cool about this story, what is really cool about this story, is the fact that, besides the fact that it's got quite a good length, and yet again, we've also had Jenny doing the voice acting for Tessa, which is fantastic. It's always nice if I can get other people to do some voices, because, I can do a fair bit, but, let's be real. I can only do so much so well. I think, God, what was I saying? I think I think for the most part, I really enjoyed the story. It's got a lot of really good depth to it. It really gets you into the mind of what's going on, of our protagonist and the craziness of the situation, the trying to learn how things work and what we could try to do, and it's very good. It's very good that he tries a lot of things. I think that makes a lot of sense logically for me. The part that kind of really threw me for a curveball was that, so I had to read the story like 2 or 3 times just to make sure I didn't miss anything. But out of the blue, he mentions this gliding man, right? And I was like, huh? It just kind of came out of nowhere that conveniently there is this one creepy, bizarre man who doesn't act like a normal human every single loop, and that was like never brought up before, but you're led to be believed that you have been, just by the way that he's kind of brought it. It just kind of threw me for a loop, and then yet again, like we found out that, oh yes, there is obviously something to that. Oh good, fantastic. I guess it's good that it inevitably gets us to the breaking point of the story and breaks him out of this cycle. It felt really random, because literally before that there was no inkling of something off besides the fact that you're in a loop, right? There was nothing that was suspicious. So that was the only thing that really took me out of it. Otherwise, yet again, even with the fact that like this monster's trapped him in his own room pretty much the entire time, and I suppose, yeah, feeding off of his emotions and everything, I'm surprised he hasn't died. So that's quite interesting. So clearly there's a way for him to be in this comatose-like state, I suppose. I'm not really sure. Under some level of mind control, hypnotism, or whatever. Really interesting. Really interesting. I'm glad he got saved, though. That was quite beautiful. Which makes me think of, I feel like there's probably quite a number of creatures that would kind of fit this bill. The two that immediately kind of come to my mind, though, are Illithids, the mind flayers, if you will, that you see out of Dungeons & Dragons, or if you don't know that super well, maybe you know it from Baldur's Gate 3. Which, yeah, they do a lot of mind manipulation stuff and mind controlling in a way, and obviously they want to inevitably create more of their kind by implanting parasites in their brains and stuff. But they do a lot of manipulation of the mind, so that kind of works. The other one is out of Chinese mythology, which is Yao Guais. And I mean, it doesn't fully quite fit like 100%. But yet again, it's a lot of like mind manipulation, and they kind of fuck with people in a way. But what else is really interesting is that Yao Guais kind of they can almost come like they can almost be made out of anything really. They kind of like in some cases they can be made out of like frogs or something like that. It's like a demon that spawns out of something that is not demonic, right? Which is a really interesting concept. But yeah, they could be like cursed souls and vengeful spirit type deal. And they do a lot of like manipulation and deceiving of humans and everything. So it kind of works. Not 100%, but it kind of works. If we want to talk about other things that it made me think about, there's if you want a horror movie that has a looping mechanism, Happy Death Day, which is it's all right. I mean it's pretty quirky and fun. It's kind of a horror slasher type deal, but this girl keeps living her birth. I think the point is it's the day that she dies. She keeps reliving it over and over. I think it's also her birthday. I think that was like the point. That's like the double point of the movie. Which it's pretty good. It's pretty fun. It's very slasher. But not in a bad way. It's goofy and it's entertaining, and it's some people might call it scary. I think it's over the top with some of the slasher aspects myself, so it kind of makes me no longer feel like it's scary. It's a little bit more goofy, but it's fine. So that's a good little one. Some people might say things like, I was thinking of maybe the movies like Looper and stuff like that, but the thing is that their loops are not confined to just like one day. They're confined to the fact that like how a timeline could be manipulated. So anyway, it also made me think of the Smile movie a little bit. But if I'm honest with you, I've only seen the first Smile movie. I haven't seen the second Smile movie. I think there's a level of manipulation of people in that, but I don't think it's quite the same. You know what I mean? The last thing, though, that it made me think about, which some of you might find quite interesting, is The Truman Show, which is it's a great Jim Carrey movie back in the 90s. And so it's not exactly a looping of the same day, but it does allude to the fact that, like, the whole stage is, the whole world of his that he lives in and exists in is basically fake. It's a show, as is why it's called The Truman Show. I'm sorry if I'm spoiling it for you if you want to see it, but I mean, come on, like, it's kind of in the name. And so his life is basically being scripted, it's being broadcast. The only thing that's not scripted, the only one who's not in on it is Truman himself. So Truman is going through his life like he normally would, but everything around him is not real, right? It's all scripted and actors and fake stages and stuff like that. So it's meant to be an entertaining show that people get to watch, which people do get to watch his life. That's the thing. I don't know. I don't remember exactly why or how, all that stuff, but it's quite good. It's quite great, and it's quite mindfucky, especially when he starts really kind of figuring things out. It's crazy. But it's simply because it simply made me think of this because the fact that, like, you know, Truman kind of he figures out that he's a prop in a show, basically. The show is about him, but, you know, it's all a lie. And in The Perfect Tuesday, there's also these mentions of, like, you know, oh, it's like my life's a show for this one entity, this one creature, whatever. And I was like, oh yeah, that makes me think of The Truman Show because of that. Anyway, I've been rambling long enough. I've really enjoyed The Perfect Tuesday, and I sure hope you have too. I gotta do a little bit of packing. I'm gonna be flying out to the States in less than 24 hours, so I gotta get cracking. It's been so much fun, my friends. I've had a fantastic time, and I sure hope you have too. This has been Nate at Night, and I will see you for whatever's next. Take care out there. Shout out to these cool peeps. Seriously, we wouldn't have got this far without them. You're all amazing. I love you all so much. Honestly, it's tremendous work you do. Supporting the channel, keeping us afloat. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. You too could become a cool peep for just $1 a month. What that's going to get you is 2 weeks early access to future videos. It's also going to get you exclusive members-only content. And there might be extra goodies coming along the way. What can I say? I'm just charitable like that. Or you can become super cool. Now that's $5 a month, but what you're going to get out of that is all the perks from the previous tier, plus also 10% discount on future merchandise, and also access to my private Discord server with a fantastic little community that we have, where I plan on hosting monthly movie nights and also weekly casual hangouts. You can also show your support by tipping through either Super Chats, Super Thanks, both on YouTube, or through my Streamlabs.com URL, which will be in the description of future videos below. Cheers for now, guys!